Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Family Sedan channel. It turns out that attorney John Deaton and attorney Jeremy Hogan have different perspectives on what is most probable upon the conclusion of the SEC v. Ripple case, or more precisely, upon Judge TORRES' ruling on the motions for summary judgment, because, as it turns out, of course, I'm sure everybody's aware, there's certainly an opportunity for either side to appeal should they lose. So, Attorney Deaton believes that it is possible that if the SEC loses, that the SEC actually might file an appeal, whereas Attorney Jeremy Hogan does not believe that the SEC would be willing to do that. Now, there's more nuance to it, so we're going to break it down here, and I don't pretend to know exactly what's right or most probable, but I have my unprofessional speculation. But before going further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a legal or financial background of any kind. I am not offering legal or financial advice, and you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. Now, hopefully this goes without saying at this point, because we've been in this damn case for over 2.5 years at this point. But should there be an appeal, depending on exactly what follows thereafter, we could be looking at years of continued nonsense on this topic. Literally years. I really hope that doesn't happen. I mean, I'll say this, though. I do think if it comes to that and you're talking about going all the way to the Supreme Court, yes, it would be literally years from now. Damn, that would be awful. But the silver lining there, maybe more than just a silver lining, would be that we would finally have that positive clarity, and I have the utmost confidence that with the current makeup of the SEC, I think that they'd come to the right conclusion because they are so against government overreach here. And this is very obvious government overreach. So here's the headline from today from the Crypto Basic. Deaton explains where SEC versus Ripple case is heading after summary judgment. So I'm going to share with you perspective from Attorney Deaton and then what Attorney Hogan has said in the past. Here we go. According to Attorney Deaton, Judge TORRES knows Ripple will appeal any unfavorable ruling, adding that the case may likely head to the U.S. Supreme Court. And here's a quote from Attorney Deaton. She, Judge TORRES, knows Ripple is appealing if she rules in favor of the SEC. Let's face it, this case will go to the U.S. Supreme Court most likely if it goes up on appeal, end quote. So that's what Attorney Deaton said, and that's spot on. And look, if Ripple loses, we know what Ripple's doing, because Ripple has publicly articulated that if they lose, of course they're going to appeal. So we already know that for sure, because they publicly stated that. The SEC has remained tight-lipped on this, and so we don't technically know for sure. But an additional thing that Attorney Deaton noted when he was within the same thought process yesterday when he was sharing these comments actually on his channel, one of the things that he stated also was that it's possible that if the SEC loses, that they will file an appeal, but it may just be, and I'm kind of paraphrasing here a little bit, but it was something to the effect of, it could just be like a show of force. So they're trying to make Ripple feel as though they have hand, and that could impact a potential conclusion between the parties, because it's always possible that the SEC could, yes, appeal if they lose, but then retract the appeal before it goes to court. So that's a possible. It could be a show of force, and if there could be a strategic reason. And so Attorney Deaton did point that out as well. So even if there's an appeal, it doesn't mean it couldn't necessarily be retracted. But if Ripple's the one that appeals because they lose, yeah, that one's going going the whole 9 miles. The SEC one, maybe it will, maybe it won't. Anyway, piece continues. Attorney Deaton reiterated that Ripple's summary judgment brief is written for the appellate courts. He stressed that the SEC might negotiate with Ripple to stop the company from appealing the ruling. People have been speculating that the SEC versus Ripple lawsuit could birth a new securities test, dubbed the Ripple test. Deaton said that the Ripple test could go on to serve as a supplement to the existing Howey test used to determine whether a transaction qualifies as an investment contract. And furthermore, Deaton stressed that there is a tendency the SEC might file a notice of appeal once the judge issues her summary judgment decision. However, Deaton thinks the commission may choose to negotiate with Ripple instead of appealing any unfavorable decision. And so who knows, maybe at that point, if it does come to that, maybe Ripple would cede some sort of ground, but not so much ground that it would be perceived as unreasonable. It could be positive for XRP holders. And then that way the SEC potentially could save some face. But, there is good reason to think that the SEC, if they lose, they're just not going to appeal. They're just going to throw in the towel right away. And that seems to be the perspective of attorney Jeremy Hogan. And he shared his thoughts back in April, actually. And so there's an article from Crypto Basic titled, "Top Lawyer Says SEC Will Not Appeal If Ripple Wins." And let me get down to the quotes. We can just get kind of to the meat of this. Let me go a little bit lower. I think it was down here. Yeah, here we go. According to Hogan, the SEC will not appeal any unfavorable decision from Judge Torres because the move is of no benefit to the regulator. And by the way, I'll just pause note here. I'm going to flesh out all of his ideas because it's right here. But that certainly, it could be the case that Attorney Hogan's right here. And it's like, it really ultimately wouldn't be a benefit to them, which is why perhaps if we do see an appeal, it's more in line with what Attorney Deaton was thinking, which is, hey, and these are my words, not his, but like a show of force type of thing, trying to get Ripple to sit down and actually negotiate so that maybe the SEC can get something in theory out of it, with them understanding, hey, we're not actually going to press this thing. And why wouldn't they press this thing? Well, Attorney Hogan articulates some pretty good reasons as to why the SEC maybe probably not going to be in their favor to do so. Piece continues. He added that the SEC risks setting a binding precedent if the Second Circuit of the Appellate Court still rules against the Commission. And so here's a quote from Attorney Jeremy Hogan. "If the judge rules in Ripple's favor, I do not think the SEC is going to appeal. The reason I say that is because there is no benefit to the SEC to appeal, because if the case goes to the Second Circuit in the Appellate Court and the Second Circuit rules against the SEC, now that becomes a binding precedent," end quote. Yeah, so what you'd have if the SEC loses at this current level, the federal level here with Judge Torres, it could be in a theory you could call like precedent setting, but not legally binding precedent. It would be precedent in that here's a decision from a judge, you can be aware of it, might impact you. So there's some sort of quote unquote precedent set, but it's just not legally binding. So not that it wouldn't have an impact either way. But anyway, piece continues. He added that a ruling against the SEC at the Second Circuit would affect the regulator's chances of winning other cases against crypto companies. Yeah, so this is a very strong reason as to why it would be incredibly risky for the SEC to actually not just appeal, but then go through with the appeal should they lose. And so here's a quote from Hogan. "I'm 90% sure this is what they will do. When they lose, there won't be an appeal because they don't want to mess up their whole agenda here and enforce these regulations against the crypto space," end quote. And I gotta admit, I do find that pretty compelling, but I also think that what Attorney Deaton said is pretty compelling, as in, what if they're just doing it to try and bring Ripple to the negotiating table and just, looking like acting as though they have a strong hand when in reality they absolutely do not. I could absolutely see something like that unfold. Now, as an XRP holder, I just want this damn thing to be done. I really do. As cool as it might be to have something called the Ripple test and then have that be a binding precedent for all things henceforth, and it would be, my God, the amount of agony that our entire community would have to go through to get to that point, it would just be repulsive and disgusting. That would be a tough one. Now, if that's what it takes, I'll tell you what, I'm going to be here. I'm absolutely going to be here because all I'm going to do is feel that much more fired up, honestly, if it comes to it. But what I really want is for the little, whiny bitch asses at the SEC to lose here and then just go away. I want them to acquiesce. I want them to not appeal, even if they act like they're going to appeal and go through with it. Do that if you want to, you little whiny bitches. But then ultimately, I want them to just, tuck the tail between the legs and just wander on off. And by the way, I say tail because they are spawns of Satan and they do have tails. So that's what I want to see from them. And then to see them go away. And that way, we finally have the clarity, at least specifically for XRP. Now, I'm still going to worry about the SEC coming after the rest of my net worth because I own other cryptocurrencies and they are spawns of Satan. So I think that, they have every intention of going after, all sorts of other, they have been, obviously. So they're here to harm your net worth. If you're listening to this and you're in crypto, they're going after you in that sense anyway. But my God, there's no community in crypto that deserves to just have some damn peace all up in this bitch at this point in time. Who deserves it more than the XRP community at this point, after the years of nonsense that we've gone through, and the whole time having to put up with toxic Bitcoin maxi trolls? My God, those Velcro shoe wearing sons of bitches. I don't know about you. I've had about enough of them as well, like, honestly. So, you know, I'm optimistic that what should be done will ultimately be done, but I'm just kind of hoping that we can get there without having to go to the Supreme Court. That's all I'm getting at. That's all I'm getting at. Tell me what you think is most probable. Keep the conversation going in the comment section below. I'll wrap up here, though. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the Moon Family Sedan.